Let me ask you something. Have you ever been underestimated so badly that people actually laughed at the idea of you succeeding? Because on one cold morning in high school, my PE teacher, the same guy who spent years mocking me for being small, slow, and fragile, challenged me to cycle up a mountain with him. He thought he was about to destroy me, but instead I made him vomit in the parking lot while the whole class watched. And trust me, he never bullied me again. If you've ever had someone look down on you or wished you could serve justice to someone who pushed you around, hit that like button, subscribe, and get ready, because this is the story of how I finally got my revenge, one brutal pedal stroke at a time. So let me take you back. Over a decade ago, I was that kid people whispered about because of a congenital heart defect. I wasn't dying, I wasn't fragile, I was just different. The doctors told me to avoid explosive sports. No sprinting, no sudden bursts, no chaos. So while other kids chased footballs and tackled each other, I sat on the sidelines, skinny, clumsy, and always out of breath. I learned early on that kids can smell weakness, and adults sometimes smell it too. In high school we had this PE teacher, let's call him Mr. Alpha Male, the neon whistle indoor sunglasses type who peaked in a regional soccer match and never moved on. He didn't just ignore the slow kids, he mocked us. He once forced my overweight friend to jump off a trampoline over a stool, something he clearly couldn't do, and when my friend cracked his head, all the teacher said was, "Should have trained harder." No apology, just ego, and me. I was his favorite target. Every week he'd say, "Let's see if our resident ghost boy survives 10 minutes of basketball today," and everyone laughed. I pretended it didn't hurt, but inside, every jab added a crack in my armor. But here's the twist. I actually loved sports, just not the kind he cared about. One summer, I watched the Tour de France, and something in me lit up. These guys weren't exploding, they were enduring. Smooth, steady, focused. My heart didn't like bursts, but it loved long, sustained effort. So I bought a road bike, first a cheap one, then a real one. And suddenly the kid who couldn't score a basket could climb mountains. Literally, there was a 12.5 kilometers, 6.9% gradient hill near my house, and I rode it over 100 times until I knew every curve. That mountain became my therapy, my escape, and eventually my weapon. Fast forward to sophomore year, the school planned a hike at the top of my mountain. The bus would take everyone, but Mr. Alpha said anyone could cycle up with him, and he wouldn't wait for anyone who fell behind. The class laughed. People looked at me like an insect under glass. Something snapped, and I raised my hand. He smirked. You think you can keep up?" I smiled and said, "I'll manage." He had no idea. The morning of the ride, I treated it like a race. Warm-up, nutrition, electrolytes. I showed up in full cycling kit with my lightweight road bike. I was 1755 kilos and for the first time genuinely confident. He arrived on a clunky mountain bike, wearing gym shorts and an ego that weighed more than he did. The first 10 kilometers were flat, and he set a hard pace, probably trying to break me early. I hung back just enough to make him think he could drop me, then effortlessly returned to his wheel every time. I didn't smile, didn't speak, didn't even look tired, but inside, I was grinning, because his breathing was already getting heavy. When we hit the first ramp of the mountain, he let out a tiny gasp, and that told me everything. He was already near his limit, and we were going 5 kilometers per h slower than my usual pace. I rolled up beside him and said, "You know, someone's getting dropped today. Would be a shame if the class found out who." His laugh was weak. I took the lead and slowly tightened the pace, just enough to hurt him, but not enough to drop him. Every time he looked like he might pass out, I eased up, then turned the screw again. It was psychological warfare, Tour de France style. He was suffering, and I was in the happiest place I'd ever been. Near the summit, he was barely hanging on, sweat pouring, legs shaking, breath panicked, and when the parking lot came into view, I whispered, "This is where I usually start my sprint," and launched. Full attack, he didn't get dropped. He detonated. When he finally reached the top, he collapsed and vomited in the parking lot. A few classmates saw, everyone heard. The man who mocked me for years was destroyed by the kid he underestimated most. I didn't gloat, I didn't laugh, I just sat next to him in silence while he recovered. He skipped the hike, I stayed with him like he promised, and after that day he never mocked me again. Not once. The weakest kid in the room might not be weak, he might just be waiting for the right mountain. He challenged me, underestimated me, mocked me, and on that mountain I made him pay for every insult with a pedal stroke. Watching him crumble was the most satisfying moment of my teenage years. If this story taught me anything, it's this. Don't bully the quiet ones. Don't assume you know someone's limits, because one day you might meet them on their home turf. If this revenge story gave you chills, smash that like button, tell me the sweetest revenge you've ever seen, and subscribe for more stories where karma does its job. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.